Welcome to The Hidden World of Women, a podcast brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. My name is Emma and I'll be your host for today's episode. Today I'm joined by another amazing woman. I'm joined by Cinta. Cinta's the mum to 3 boys. She enjoys writing and she's here to talk to me today about her journey into motherhood. So welcome and thanks for joining me, Cinta.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
So your journey into motherhood, I guess it wasn't necessarily an unusual way to become a mum. You just started a bit younger than a lot of other people.
Basically he was my 18th birthday present, if you work out the math.
Wow. Yeah.
So I had him and then 3 months later turned 19.
So how was it being a young mum?
Oh my gosh. Old people are so judgmental, and I feel really bad saying that because technically I'm an old
person. Because now we're old.
But I don't look like the looks I used to get from people walking past, and I would just be like...
Was this when you were pregnant or when you had him?
Yeah, when I was pregnant, and when I had him, it wasn't quite as bad.
Because you could have been a sister.
Unless they stopped me and, oh, he's so cute and stuff, and then I'd be like, yeah. Oh, he looks a bit like you freak. But then it was just the judgment. What is the point of that? Like...
Yeah, it's so. I remember I was married and I was pregnant with my second child, and I was very heavily pregnant. I was walking down the street with my arm linked through my dad's arm, and so my dad is obviously significantly older than me, being my dad, and hearing somebody who was really quite loud making a judgmental comment about the age difference between us. What she didn't, she obviously didn't realise who I was because I turned around and called her out but I called her by her name because I knew her.
Oh,
and told her that perhaps she should be a little bit less judgmental. And didn't share that it was my dad. Like, it's none of her business.
Yeah.
But just, so that was just a one moment where I could kind of have that same sort of thing of people making a judgment based on nothing to do with them.
Exactly. And I mean, in that sort of circumstance as well, I mean, people like, I'm pretty sure it's Steve Martin, went grey really early.
Yeah.
So he might not have been that much older than you, but her judgment call was that he was.
No one's business.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So when you fell pregnant with your eldest baby, were you still at school?
Technically, yes, but no. I had graduated because my birthday's April, so I had graduated in the November of the year before that. But I didn't get the marks that I wanted. I had a few fuzzy things happen in that area, and the exams didn't go so well for me, all that kind of stuff. So to get into uni, I didn't get the marks that I wanted. So I'd actually enrolled and gone back to Canning College so I could repeat year 12, which was actually a blessing in disguise, because I think if I had been in my first year of uni and got pregnant, I would have dropped out. Yeah. Whereas because I had done year 12 before, I knew I could do it. And while I was 6-7 months pregnant when I did my TEE for the second time, I did it and I got through it, and I had my oldest in January and started uni in February because I got in that year. So I think if I had have gone straight through to uni and hadn't had to repeat year 12, it would have been more of an issue.
Yeah. So how, and 18 it's not that young to be having a baby.
Not really.
It's still, you're still a consenting adult kind of thing. Yeah.
I mean, back then, it's not so as bad now, but back then it was still... Oh, you still only a baby, and because I've always been told I never look my age, so that was a problem as well because I didn't look 18 to a lot of people. Yeah. But I think that was a judgment as well that came back into it. So
I'm imagining you can remember. How did it feel when you thought, oh my goodness, I might be pregnant?
Okay, so I'm a little bit slow on the uptake of a lot of things, and I had felt sick for a few days. And I hadn't thought anything of it, like not even slightly thought pregnancy track. Like I said, slow. I had got, and I was just feeling a bit off, and I thought, oh, well, I don't know, maybe I'm just stressed out. Maybe it's, work or doing TE again or that sort of stuff. So, but on the weekend, I'd gone out with my brother and we went to KFC. And because back then KFC was really not very close to where we lived. So we only had it every so often. Yeah. It wasn't very, and we went to KFC and I ordered potato gravy, my favourite thing in the whole world. And I remember opening it and going to put the first spoonful in my mouth, and I'm like, I can't eat this, I'm going to throw up. And I was like, oh, that's a bit weird. Maybe I am sick. I better go see the doctor. So I got to the doctor and I was talking to her about it, and she sort of rolled her eyes at me, and I still didn't make the connection. And I went to maybe go pee on the stick, come back, and she's like, you're pregnant. And I'm like, no, I'm not.
No, really, I'm not.
And then that just... I was like, oh my God, very Irish Catholic family background, and oh my God, I remember saying, like a couple of years before that, I had said to my mum, because we had a friend whose daughter had a baby early and stuff. I remember saying, what happens if I have a baby before I'm married? Because you'll be in a box before you're married.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And that was the first thing that ran through my head. I mean, she didn't mean it, obviously, because I'm still here.
Yeah. Or she did mean it. She couldn't work out like an accident.
That was just the first thing that ran through my head, and that just broke me. And then I remember the doctor sort of clicking in my face, like, well, we've got to, you've, you know, basically her opinion was you've got to have an abortion because there's no way to, you'll never have any money in your life, you'll never go to uni, you'll never have a career, you won't stay with his dad. That's never going to happen. So the next guy, you're not going to find another guy because no one wants a kid, like a
somebody else's kid. Yeah.
So your life's basically over if you don't terminate. And I was like, huh? Like, huh? And I went home and I stewed on it for a little bit. I actually probably kind of told my mum first, which looking back, I can understand why I did it, but it probably wasn't the nicest thing to do. I probably should have told his dad first. It was just, that's, you're at 18, you're still at home. Mum
knows everything.
First thing, and she didn't talk to me for a while, and then it was a day or so later, and she came back and she'd gone out, and she came back and she was fine, and I was like, oh, okay. You know
I'm still pregnant, right?
You made your peace with it, or what's happening? And all she sort of said was, well, you have always wanted to be a teacher, so you're on the track to going to uni, so you're staying in my house until you finished university. And I was like, okay. Where did that come from? And then I found out that she's gone to see my grandma, and my grandma's like, well, because she'd said to my grandma, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I kick her out. Well, my grandma, love my grandma, beautiful, God rest her soul. Well, if you kick her out, she's coming here, and if she doesn't want you here, you're not welcome.
Oh.
Mum was like, huh? What? But yeah, my grandma was just that person. You don't get rid of your own type thing. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And so yeah, told the dad and got through it. It was really hard telling people. And
did you tell him in person?
Yes. Because mobiles weren't really
that's about to say,
then. So I didn't have the, text ability or anything like that. Didn't even have my own mobile back then. The rule was if I went out driving, I had to take Mum's mobile, but I didn't have my own one. And so yeah, I invited him over for dinner, and I went out the front and told him. And
so you told him before he had to come into the house and have dinner with your family?
Yeah. Because my mum's not a very big woman, larger size, but she's quite small, but she's scary. Like, a lot of people are absolutely petrified of my mother. And so and he's huge, big, tall bloke, and just he went white he's not very dark anyway, but he went white as a ghost. And just then my mum's like, come on, you can't be outside, it's cold, let's go. Come on, in we go. And he's just like, okay.
Am I for dinner?
My mum's like, it's fine. I was upset first, but bring it in. There's nothing we can do about it now. Here we go. And so he was like, oh, okay. His mother was a little bit of a different story, but everyone reacts to things in their own way, I guess.
Yeah. So obviously the doctor told you that in her opinion you should terminate.
Oh, it wasn't even her opinion. That was my only option.
That was the only option. Yeah.
Nice. I told my mum that, and she kind of went. And so that backstory, that had been my doctor since I was born, pretty much.
Yeah.
And when I told my mum, and I'm like, she's made an appointment, because the last thing she said to me was, oh, well, we've only got this amount of time. You've got to make the right decision. So you have to come. So she made an appointment for me. You have to be back here to let me know that you finally come to your senses.
So you've just had everything kind of, I imagine it must have felt like the world was just closing in on you.
Oh, yeah.
To, this idea of a pregnancy that hadn't been planned. You're only 18, you're doing year 12 again, you're not living with your partner, you're still living at home in a very Catholic family, with a partner who was from a very Catholic family as well.
Yeah.
And, so a pregnancy you hadn't been expecting, everything must have felt, and yet being told by your mum that, in the past, somewhat jokingly, you hope that if it ever happened to you, you were going out in a box. And then, so no time to even process that before somebody who's in a position of authority is telling you that the only option that you have is to terminate that child.
Yeah, so realistically, if I hadn't had so many strong, powerful women influences in my life, that doctor telling me that probably would have been the only thing I would listen to.
Oh, and that's, I didn't know you were going to say that, but that brings me so much joy that you have so many powerful women in your life who were able to be there for you, to tell you that there are other options.
Well, it wasn't even that. I always
Maybe they didn't tell you that there were other options. You've got one option, Cinta.
Well, for my mum, the only option was keeping it. There was no if, buts, or maybes. But she didn't say that until after I had made the decision. So, which is a good thing, I suppose. But just, growing up, my mum's sisters and my second mum, well, I called her my second mum, the lady who lived across the road, who was like my mum's best mate, and then, another mate of my mum's and my grandmother, just really like, if it doesn't feel right for you, then no, that's not right. And so having that influence all my life, to have her stand there and go, well, this is your only option. That's a challenge for Cinta. Please don't do that, because that's how I had been raised, and that's what the influences around me all my life had brought me to believe. So that was a big thing. But then going back to see the doctor, I was really scared. And my mum's like, well, you're not going on your own.
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh, okay. So she came back with me, and the doctor just kept rolling her eyes because I said, I've decided to keep it. And she's like, oh. And just that.
Such a drain on society.
Oh, my God. It is. And my mum's just, literally, it was one of those cartoon, you could see the steam coming out of her ears. And I'm sort of like cowering a little, moving further away from my mum as I can. And just everything, she's like, oh, we'll send you to the adolescent clinic at King Edward, because, they've got counsellors and everything there you'll have to see who can help you make more informed and the right decisions. And my mum was like, I beg your pardon, the right decisions for who? And so then I'm at the point, where I'm like, okay, Mum, let's.
Can we go? We
better go. And I'll never forget, I had never heard my mum swear before that day, ever. Yeah. And as we opened the door, and so there's a full waiting room of patients, open the door, and my mum walks out behind me, and I'm like, okay, just let us get out the door, just let us get out the door. And my mum's like, you're never coming back to see this effing moon bitch again. And my mum's not a quiet person, not even slightly. The entire waiting room heard it, and even the doctor, I could hear the doctor go, huh? But funny thing was, because I started uni, he was only 4 weeks old, and so there was a couple of days where he'd go to his Oma, so other grandmother, and then the rest of the time when I was at uni, he'd stay with my mother.
Yeah.
And she also had my grandmother had moved in as well when I had him. So any doctor's appointments or anything that she went to, it was the same doctor. So she wouldn't let me go to her anymore, and she wouldn't allow my oldest to go to her. But Grandma was at that age where she was 80 and there was that many medications and stuff. Yeah. It just wasn't worth it. So she always made sure that she made appointments for the days that she didn't have my oldest. Yeah. So she never took him there. But it happened to be this one day he was maybe 3 months old, because he was still in the capsule, and he was a big boy, so he didn't get in the capsule long.
Yeah.
And she couldn't avoid it, so she took him in the capsule, and he slept in the waiting room. He was still asleep. She walked into the room. She put the capsule behind her chair and sat in front of it. She goes, and she could see the doctor was annoying her, because she could see the doctor was like, oh, and then she eventually went, oh, what a beautiful little baby. My mum went, yep, and if you had your way, he wouldn't be here. We'll move on, shall we?
Yeah.
Mum goes to the doctor and we fell off her chair.
Yeah. That's so hard. And you're really fortunate that you had that experience of having so many strong women who had surrounded you throughout your childhood and through you growing up, that gave you the courage to be able to say, you know what, just because there is somebody who's in a position of authority telling me that this is what to do, I actually get the chance to question that, and I get the chance to make the decision that's right for me. But it's really scary to think that so many people
didn't feel like
won't have had that.
Yeah. That breaks my heart. It really does.
Yeah, that's terrible. And so then obviously you broke the news to baby's dad.
Yes.
Were you with him when he told his parents?
No. And
that didn't go so well, you said?
Well, they were obviously upset. And then the next time I went around there, I was scared to go around there. And he was like, no, it's fine. They're fine. They've made their peace with it. It's okay. It's all right. And then he's like, I had to face your mum.
I had to face your mum 30 seconds after telling me.
Yeah. And so we were around there, and they'd made their peace, and it was. It wasn't a fantastically comfortable situation to start off with, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, it takes some people longer to deal with it, and that's okay. That's what it is. So it got better. And they absolutely adore him. He was spoiled his entire life, spending time with them and all that kind of thing. So they never treated him horribly or like an outcast or you know anything, or never denied that he was part of the family. He was always included in everything, and so he had that from both sides, which was really great for him growing up.
Yeah, and so your little one, you have older siblings?
Yes, I have one older and one younger.
So was your little one the first grandchild?
Yes, for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And that my brother was not happy about that.
No, because he was like quite a bit older than you as well.
Yeah, he like to say 7.5, but technically it's 8 years. Like he's born in 74, I'm born in 82, so do the math.
Yeah. Yeah, so despite, how was that, telling your siblings?
It was hard. My sister is 2 years younger, so she sort of was just excited, like there was going to be a baby. Didn't kind of get yes, she was 16, but, it's still, oh, wow, excitement. And his dad, so his auntie on the other side, was at school with her in her year. So, they had like a little bond.
Club.
Going to be aunties, and so she was fine. My brother, it was harder telling him than my dad, I reckon, because he'd always been that sort of person all my life.
Yeah.
But he got used to it as well, and he just adored my oldest and all that kind of thing. So it took them a while to get used to it, but they did come around. Yeah. But it wasn't fair that he was so much older and I had the first one. And,
Yeah. So what was the hardest thing for you going through that?
Judgment was a really big thing because it also came in when I went to have him. So he was 2 weeks late, and they.
Yeah, and just pointing out as well. So you're 5'4".
His dad's 6'4.5".
So there's a. Okay, I'm not even going into. Oh my goodness, the logistics of that must have been tricky. But the the acrobatics you can get up to when you're 18, right?
Especially in a car.
Oh my goodness. How did you fit in a car?
That's what my auntie asked me quite regularly.
Now I've just got mental pictures of legs sticking out windows and things like that. Like it just
something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, but still, it is what it is. That's right. So I've totally lost. Oh yeah. So then, your baby was not a small baby.
No, he was 10 pound 15.
Oh my goodness.
Well, the worst thing was when I first got home and my grandma said to me, "Oh, well, your oldest is always your smallest." I went, "Oh, no more."
I'm out.
Yeah, done. Thanks very much for coming. We're closed.
Yeah.
But no, that's not true. That's an old wives' tale that, an 80-year-old woman back then.
Yeah.
She would have been 100 this year. So, that's a big thing that
it's a bit of a myth.
Yeah, definitely. Because she always said that her oldest was 2 pound 10 and her youngest was
2 pounds 10.
Yeah. A lot of complications. It's really surprising that she survived.
Yeah.
And a lot of the doctors at the time used to tell my grandmother, the story my grandmother told, was that the only reason that she survived so long was because she went in every day and breastfed and expressed, and and that they reckon that's the only reason that my aunt survived. But she was 2 pound 10. So for back then, that's
beyond time.
Must be 80 years.
Yeah.
80, or just coming up to 80. Probably in the next couple of years.
Yeah, somewhere around that.
Right?
Yeah,
somewhere around there, but at least 70 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Because my mum's in her 70s, so definitely closer to the 80s.
Yeah.
So and she survived, which was a miracle, really.
Yeah, really is.
So he was giant. I was 2 weeks over. They kept trying to induce labour, and it just my body's gone.
There's no way this is coming out.
I know. I had an aunt who was pregnant at the same time, and other people that I knew that were pregnant, and they'd go, "Oh, the doctors have, felt around and they think the baby's about this size," or we've had an ultrasound and they think the baby's about this size. I never had any of that. All I ever had was I can't work out which way the baby is because I can't.
There's too many limbs in here.
But they never said anything. There was no guesstimation whatsoever as to size. And so when we went in, and we went in 2 weeks, like just after he was due.
Yeah.
And because I had high blood pressure, so I know we've got to induce. So they did the gel thingy.
Yeah.
And that didn't work. And they're like, "Oh well, you've still got 2 weeks. We've still got 2 weeks. We can give you leeway. So we can either go right the 3 gel hasn't worked, we'll try something else, or you can go, but you have to be back on Friday.
Yeah.
Like, so I must have been a week over. You have to be back Friday because baby has to come out by then. We'll just see how it goes. Having the gel for the week might help.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, then no worries. I'm going home. See you later.
Yeah.
And so I ended up having to go back on the Friday, and it was, they said, okay, well, we've tried the gel 3 times before, but we can look at it. This is a new time we can do the gel. So they did the gel twice. They said either we can do the gel again because we've got another, or we go, right, the gel's not working because technically that's the fifth time we've done it. And we've got to look forward. And I went, yeah, let's try something else, shall we? Because my mum kept saying she had inverted uterus, or she couldn't give birth naturally. Yeah. That's basically what it was. And so she kept saying that to them, and they're like, no, it's not a hereditary thing. It won't be the same. Yeah. That's not how it works. She's only 18. We don't want to scar her when she's only a kid. And so my mum's like, you think this isn't scarring?
I was going to say,
come on, mate.
Yeah.
But so they ended up having to do the forced opening of the cervix.
Oh.
And then they had to manually break my waters eventually, because I freaked out every time they came in to do anything. Yeah. With regards to that, so they ended up having to put a spinal block in so they could actually get my legs off the bed and stuff like that.
Well, that's the other thing, because at 18. That's really invasive. I mean, it's invasive at any age,
especially
don't get me wrong.
Especially when it's a guy that has to come in and do it, or some big Russian lady with long fingernails.
With really massive hands. Yeah. I mean, I get why they can't do it with somebody with petite hands, but still.
Yeah, I do. I understand.
They're like the size of basketballs at times.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Think, where are you going with that?
Oh, exactly. Same way for me. So, they ended up having to put a catheter in and force the cervix open, and that forced it open 2 centimetres, manually broke my waters and put me on the drip.
Yeah.
Highest I could have for my height, weight, however they work it out. And that was 9 o'clock on the Saturday night. 5:30 on the Sunday morning, the midwife came in and she goes, sweetie, I hate to break it to you, but this really isn't working. I'm like, you think? Yeah. Like, come on, I've been here since Friday night. She goes, so I think we're going to have a chat with the doctor because we're going to have to think of something else because this isn't working.
There's 2 ways the baby can come out, and one of them's not working.
Yeah.
So...
Well, I had dilated 1 centimetre on my own with the drip in, the induction drip, since 9 o'clock the night before. Yeah. So, like, it's, this isn't working. Yeah. It's not going to happen. Because my body's just going, nope. Yeah. And it wasn't until they decided, all right, we'll do an emergency Caesar. Yeah. Which wasn't scheduled until 9:30. I'm like, so that's 4 hours away. How is that? And, like, I couldn't get the whole emergency, because emergency to me is, like, flashing lights.
Yeah.
But no, it's an emergency Caesar because we have to do it. There's no other option. I'm like,
it's a medically necessary Caesar.
Yes, okay. But then by the time they actually got us in there, his heart was there, I was bleeding, and so then it was like rush. And I remember them giving me, I hate needles, so yeah, I know, it sounds silly, but I haven't even got a tattoo yet because I'm so scared of needles. But I really want one. Just the fear gets me. So they gave me a injection, and I had to drink this like liquid chalk stuff so that I wouldn't throw up in the theatre. Oh, I threw up in the theatre. Don't worry about that. But I've had asthma all my life, so I've always had that real deep cough. And it's really hard to cough when your stomach muscles are separated. Yeah. Because you've got nothing to... Yeah. I know that sounds silly, but
no, it's not. I had pneumonia with my second, and I know exactly what you mean. Yes.
I couldn't believe it. And so I'm like laying there going...
Yeah.
What on earth is happening to me? Trying to vomit as well.
Oh, God, to get it out.
But that whole reflex was happening, and it was terrible. And then I would never forget because they put the sheet up with a Caesar so that you can't see anything, and then they have a bright mirror right on top of you that you can see everything. And I just remember the doctor pulling him out and going, holy F. Yeah. Because they had no idea how big he was. And he struggled to get him out of the hole they had made, basically. Yeah. And couldn't, and even the anaesthetist that was standing next to me was like, oh dear Lord, darling, how did that come out of you? And I was like, oh, no wonder my stomach was so big.
So who was in with you throughout all of this?
So my mum and the baby's father were there the whole time I was being induced and stuff, but because with a Caesar you can only have one person go in, so the dad came in. Yeah. So I thought that was only right.
Yeah. And how did he go being in the room? Because he was quite young as well.
Yeah, he's about 6 months older than me, but back when we were at school, that made him the year ahead of me at school. And so he was already 19. and he was sort of like a bit grossed out and didn't really watch what was happening on the other side of the sheet. He was pretty much just talking to me, but he did get to cut the cord.
Yeah.
And then because they still had, with the bleeding and stuff, I had to stay in for a little bit, so he ended up going out with the baby, which I think he felt a bit guilty about, but that it is what it is. They're not going to let you stay in here anyway, so you either go with the baby or you go out on your own, you know, make a decision. And I remember when I sort of blanked out a little bit then, but then after that I remember being wheeled out. Oh, he held Bubs up, because I never found out, not with any of my kids. I didn't find out what I was having, and he held Bubs up sort of over the blank sheet so that I could say, oh, here you go, this is what it is. And then he just goes, you're covering the important bits with your bloody hand. Because of the way he was holding you. And he's like, oh, sorry. And it just sort of dangled out. I was like, oh, okay. And then
it's still a surprise.
The next thing I remembered, I was being wheeled out into the recovery room, and my mum was waiting in the hallway between the theatre and the recovery room, and I remember she was crying.
Oh, I bet.
And my mum doesn't cry, and all I can remember her saying is, you're supposed to have them newborn, not 3 months old.
But that's such my family would say things like that as a way to kind of cover the emotion and the stress and the fear
and that's what I remember in her face was just I think because he had been out for so long.
Yeah.
And I wasn't out
You're
yet.
not there, and you're still her baby.
Yeah.
And even now.
I can't so understand that feeling now.
Yeah, that's it. But even now, as you're a little bit older than you were when you had him, I'm no doubt still your mum's baby. You know, she'd still be the same if you were in.
And he was the first one as well, so she hadn't been through that with any any of her kids
to know how long it takes.
So, I mean, she had been through Caesars and stuff, but
but it's different when you're the one laying on the table.
Yeah. Oh well, just do it. Here we go.
That's it.
She was very just oh my gosh, and I think because. Not that she thought she deserved to be in there more than the baby's father, but
you're her
because
baby.
she couldn't be in there and she knew something was happening. Like I think that freaked her out. And as a mum now, I understand completely where she's coming from.
Yeah, that not knowing is really difficult.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so you were saying about the judgment at the hospital.
So there wasn't so much at the hospital, apart from the fact that I had trouble with attachment, so breastfeeding him. It wasn't happening, and a lot of the nurses were like, no, it's because you're so young, no, you just have to do this, and because you're so young you have to do this. They would think and they're so young, which annoyed me. I'm old enough to vote, come on, I can drink, I can smoke if I want, I'm old enough to vote, just stop saying so young. I understand that you're a lot older than me, but that's not the point. And then so it would be, oh no, you're not doing it right, that's okay, we understand, sweetie, because you're so young. And I'm like, that just got to me, and they weren't trying to be rude or horrible, and they weren't judging me. It was just that's, I think, what was ingrained in them, I guess.
And it's ridiculous because breastfeeding is really difficult.
Oh yeah.
Regardless of how old you are.
And it wasn't until I went to a clinic a week or so later, because he still wasn't attaching, and the doctor said to me, well, would you really be happy drinking out of something coming at your face that's bigger than your head? And I was like, oh, fair enough, but how embarrassing.
I think, so a lot of people say that embarrassment factor kind of disappears after you've had a baby, that, people who have been really kind of, in their words, they've been prudes, and then afterwards, after having a baby, they think, you know what, by the time the baby's ready to come out, you do it in Cole's window in front of anybody who's there. But I still think, there's a lot of things about having a baby that are quite embarrassing and overwhelming and really, in your face and, confronting, I think is the word that I'm looking for.
And there's things associated with the whole birth and everything. Yeah, you get over that because that's just what's got to happen. Yeah. But then when it comes to afterwards, it's different. I'm not giving birth now.
And there's random strangers who are trying to grab hold of my boobs.
I mean, in the, the birthing, you're just get this thing out of me.
Yeah.
But once you've had them, you don't have that level of,
there's no urgency.
Yeah.
Yeah. And going, so... And for me, I'm kind of going, geez, at 18 going through some of those things when, going totally off script, not that I have a script, but, had you even been for a pap smear before?
No, they did one while I was pregnant.
Ah.
Which mortified the doctor I was seeing at the time.
Yeah. That is unusual. So to go from never having even had a pap smear to then everything that goes with being pregnant.
Those duck bills are not friendly.
Yeah, no. But everything that goes with, all the things around, even just having the ultrasounds or...
Well, with him, I'd never
you
had
didn't.
one of the internal ultrasounds. It was only the external
Yeah.
ultrasounds. So I was all right. So it was, the first experience I had with that, I must have been about 16, 17 weeks pregnant, was my first appointment at the hospital. And they, you haven't had one, so we have to do one.
Yeah.
I did a pap smear. And my mum was absolutely rueful about that.
Yeah.
'Cause that's uncomfortable enough as it is.
Yeah.
Let alone being pregnant.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And how, like, did you have, so when you were going through all the things, like, you were going for the breastfeeding clinics, were your mum and partner at the time with you?
So the baby's dad came with me for the clinic. I only went once because I was starting and there was just so much pressure. Oh, breast is best. And I get that. And, if you can, you can. But breast is not best if it's putting you under so much stress that it's hurting you and the baby.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Fed is best.
I'm yes, exactly. And I'm not for, I'm not even going to bother trying. That's different as well.
Yeah.
There's such a grey area, but I understand how important it is for them to have everything out of the breast milk and that kind of thing. But realistically, if that is going to put your baby at in more danger if it's stressing you out and all that kind of thing. And a lot of people are going to hate on that, what I've just said, but it is what it is. And I got to the point where I was expressing and I was sick and I was getting mastitis and those sorts of things. And my mum said to me, "You know what, sweetheart, you're starting uni in a week. He's not on the bottle yet. You're going to have to put him on a bottle when you're at uni because we have to be able to feed him when we're looking after him. So at the end of the day, you need to stop stressing yourself out.
Yeah.
Studying and having a baby at the same time is going to be hard enough as it is, let alone you're putting this stress on yourself. You've just got to ignore people who are trying to push you in another direction because it's just not going to work for you."
Yeah.
And I mean, my mum was someone who breastfed without even a second thought. It just happened. So for her to say that to me as well, that also was the whole, okay, all right, I'll let it go.
Yeah.
So, because she was just like, even if he does get it in the next week, you're just going
What's going to happen
then?
then?
Anyway. So just don't worry about it. Just relax more.
Yeah.
So, and then I was like, okay, so I stopped going to the clinic and all that sort of thing. So I felt a lot better after I did that.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, like, the added pressures and it is tricky because there's it doesn't matter what you do as a mum, there's always someone who's going to tell you that you're doing it wrong.
And it's usually someone who doesn't have kids.
Yes, or someone whose kids are well grown up and they've forgotten what it was all like. But, that thing that breast is best, well, yes, it is, except fed is better, So, and I totally agree with you that if it's going, if your mental health suffers or your physical health suffers, and you're right, if baby's not getting fed, then, that's detrimental to their health as well. So breastfeeding, great if you can, but if you can't, that's why we have formulas available.
At least try, but don't pressure yourself so much that it stresses you, because that's not good.
No, it's not. And I know people who have made, they've looked at the research and they're well-educated, intelligent women. They've looked at the research and gone, you know what, breastfeeding is not going to work for me for whatever reasons, and this is why we have formula available. Yeah. So I was really lucky. I got to breastfeed all of my kids, but it's not for everyone.
And so the funny thing I find is my older two will eat anything, and neither of them would breastfeed. The little joke that I had last, my little evil Satan spawn thing, I love him to death, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But he was breastfed exclusively for a long time. And he is the pickiest eater I have ever met in my entire life. He does my head in all the time.
Yeah.
Because he won't try new things. And he those taco pockets?
Yeah.
He has them with Nutella in them. The teacher has convinced me, it took her 3 terms, convinced me that it's okay to send Nutella to school because that's all he'll eat.
At least he's eating.
But as a school teacher, it is ingrained in me that no, nuts don't go to school in any way, shape or form. Yeah. So it took me so long to be like, I'm not okay. Yeah. And the first day I did send a Nutella sandwich with him to school, he didn't even eat that.
Little turd.
Exactly. And, when he was younger, I would go to doctors and say, I'm having trouble getting him to eat. What do I do? And they're like, oh, he'll eat when he's hungry. I'm like, can you tell me what decade that will be, please? Because it's not this one.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, what do you mean? Well, he'll go 3 days without eating anything. He will eat 3 slices of cheese and he'll go another 3 days without asking for anything else. So please, how do I get him to eat?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, oh, maybe that is an issue. You think?
Yeah.
And of course, then I had to take him for his health nurse, which is another, I love health nurses, don't get me wrong. I'm not hating on them, but I was taking him along and he was always a little bit of a scrawny little thing. And I remember thinking for his second the second 2-year-old checkup, thinking, oh, this is going to be so great. The first time I'm not going to get told my child is obese. Oh, no.
He's underweight.
No, she told me he was obese. I'm like,
Oh,
what are we
really?
going to do? Cut his Jesus in half? Like, come on, that's the only thing that's got any weight on him. He looks like a poor little starving child from Africa or something with a little belly. Or, you know, Marvin the Martian was basically what he looked like. That was his body shape. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Like, I can't. Oh, well, no, obviously he's getting too many calories. From what?
The air is
Oh,
quite
my
calorie
gosh.
dense. Yeah. And it's tricky because, you know, they go off a sheet and that kind of thing. So I remember I took my middle child to the child health nurse, and he would have only been 6 weeks old, something like that. And she asked me, how long is he feeding? And I said, oh, like 5 minutes. She was, oh, that's not long enough. He won't have put on enough weight. And I was like, no, he's a very efficient feeder. And so 5 minutes, trust me, he's getting enough. She's like, no, he won't be. And she weighed him, and he'd put on something like 500 grams in 4 days. She's like, oh, maybe he is getting enough. But on my chart, it says he needs to be feeding 20 minutes on each side. Yeah, charts are good.
Yeah.
But, you know, we've got to remember that they're average. And, you know, in order to get an average, we take a fast baby, we take a really slow baby, and then we put those together and we get an average. So.
And my problem with my oldest was he started 3 months old.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, he was 5 kilos. I had to, when they said he's £10.15, his dad was like, well, I don't understand what weight
What's
that is.
that?
I'm like, it's a bag of ice, darling. Like,
Yeah.
that's how much he weighs, 5 kilos, basically.
That's such an 18-year-old reference, isn't it?
It was back then because now bags of ice are only 2.5 kilos.
Uh,
But we had, someone had given us as a gift a box of newborn nappies. My mum had to take them back to the shop because he didn't fit them.
No.
They were too small for him.
Yeah.
So the shop was really good, and they exchanged the box and gave us the next size up because that's just, he went home from hospital in a size 0 suit.
Oh my goodness.
Like, I didn't get any of
huge.
these excess zeros and stuff. Nah, not for my kid.
Did you have them?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
they've all been washed and they're all ready, so you can't return them.
And we have to go and buy some.
Yeah.
But I had friends that had had babies at the same time, so I was able to give a lot of stuff away. But I mean, he was also, there's 9 years between him and my next child,
Yeah,
so
you're
I
not
really
gonna keep
didn't
them.
keep much.
No.
So
how was it going? So then you, what I was going to say before is, you know, the idea around everybody's got an opinion. I sort of can't get my head around being 18 or, you know, 19 and going out and breastfeeding in public either. Because, you know, there's people who are like, well, breast is best, but also make sure you've got everything covered up. And but even feeling comfortable enough or confident enough to be able to breastfeed in public. So, and obviously not something that was no.
And see, with him, I never even tried in public because it was
just too hard in private, let alone in public.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that never happened. With my middle child, I expressed for 10 weeks trying to get him on the breast, and it just didn't happen. I had my starters 4 times.
Yeah.
And my doctor ended up saying to me, "No, darling, enough. They're your boobs again, not his.
Yeah.
Just stop. Just enough." And then with my youngest, he was just like, "Whoa, boobs."
Yeah. Because they're all different.
Yeah. Oh, completely different. And all these people will say, like, especially with my last one, "Oh, you must be having a girl because it's so different." And I'm like, I feel different.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact, you know, I'm like 15 years older than when I had my first child. I remember with my best friend when I was pregnant with my youngest, hadn't had any kids yet. And I remember just saying, I can't do this anymore. I'm too, it's this and it's that. And she's like, please don't put me off. I haven't had any yet. I'm like, yes, but you don't have a reference, sweetheart.
Yeah, that's
I remember being pregnant at 18 and it was just like, woohoo, let's go. Like, so much energy. I remember never getting cold.
Yeah.
I never wore a jumper for the whole time I was pregnant. And my kids are all born the first 3 months of the year. So I was pregnant right through winter with all of them. And I just never got cold whatsoever. But then with my last one, I was cold all the time. I ended up having to be medicated for morning sickness because it was so bad. And just, he's that pregnancy. If he had been my first, he'd have been my last.
Well, I don't know. We say that, but I'm not sure.
Oh, no, I couldn't. If that had been my first pregnancy, I couldn't have survived that. I wouldn't have tried. Like, I had issues and everything with my oldest, and a lot of people said to me, "Oh my God, you have another one?" After all that. But with my last one, it was just, I think the only saving grace was that because of the issues I'd had with my oldest, I didn't have a choice but to have a Caesar with the other two. So it was booked in. I knew when it was coming, and their dad was FIFO, so we could get it booked in, and he's not going to miss the birth because we could book it for when he's home. Or if it gets booked and he's at work, we know to book holidays, like that sort of thing. So that was probably the only saving grace that sort of helped
got that through that.
bit.
Oh. So you turned 19, and then you started uni.
So no, I had him end of January, started uni at the beginning of or halfway through February, and then turned 19 in April.
Oh wow, okay. So 18 with a newborn, and how did you go? Did you do uni full time or did you go part time?
Yes, but because it was a teaching degree, it was only 12 hours contact was full time.
Okay.
So I had a friend who was absolutely brilliant. I didn't know her in the first semester, obviously. I got to know her in the first semester, but she would sit down and work out the timetable so that we always had Fridays off. So we were only at uni 4 days a week, sometimes 3 if we could swing it. And just, I tried not to, I know it sounds really silly, but because of, you know, going through Catholic school and stuff like that, I had some really good friends, but there was also, again, there's a lot of judgment there and that kind of thing. So when I first got to uni, I tried not to tell people.
I can really imagine, and having grown up in that Catholic household with a partner who grew up in a Catholic household, it must have really been, I guess, ingrained and part of you.
To a certain point, yes, but again, having had those strong women influences and extended family isn't quite as Catholic and, you know, don't go to church, aren't practicing that. They grew up with it, yes, with my grandmother, but not necessarily practicing and stuff and that kind of thing. And I think one of the other good things with my oldest was that the lady that I considered my second mum who lived across the road, she had a baby young. And that was, you know, worse than back in the day. And I adored her, like, unbelievably. And she was just so excited that there was a new generation. She couldn't wait. And just the happiness, like, she was the first one who actually greeted me happily. If that. Not so much that everybody else was horrible or mean to me or anything like that, but she was just the first one that was like, oh my God, oh my God.
Yeah. I imagine that when you told people, the response was, oh.
Yeah, the whole, like, huh? And because always I'm an Indian school, so growing up, everyone always thought I was that, you know, goody, you know, type.
Well, they weren't expecting you to get knocked up in the back of a Holden.
That wasn't going to happen to her. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was just, you know, well, what is it the song says? Good girls are just bad girls who haven't been caught yet. I got caught in a big way.
Yeah. So you were uncomfortable telling people at uni.
Yeah, and I think also because I didn't want if something happened and I couldn't get to a lecture or I couldn't, you know, I was late handing in something, I didn't want that whole, it's because she's young and she's got a kid. Like, I didn't want that stigma. I didn't want people to say that. And
so you wanted to be known as Cinta. You didn't want to be known as the young one with the baby and that's constantly can't. And, you know, I remember going through uni and there was always people who couldn't get things handed in, but it was generally because they'd been partying on Saturday night, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, you kind of, if you can't hand things in on time, then it's because of you, not blaming it on your baby.
Which I never actually really did need anything with the extensions or anything like that. And the group of girls that I made, the friendships that I made, they are just the most amazing people. Yeah. And even they weren't, like, I mean, they were so excited and, you know, outside of uni, they would be the first ones to run in and grab bubs. And I know there was one that I used to go study with and she was living with her grandparents, and if I went there to study and didn't have a baby with me, oh my gosh, like, they were just beautiful people. And so they did sort of not protect me, but realistically they sort of, you know, I remember there was one class that I couldn't get to, and we were in probably third year, and there was this one class that I couldn't get to, and it was a lecturer that I didn't particularly see eye to eye with, and I hadn't got to this tutorial class that we'd gone to. We were supposed to get to every week, and she called out the roll, and, you know, where's Cinta? And one of my mates said, I think her baby was sick, and she just went on this tangent for about 5 minutes. You know, I'm just so proud of her, like, just everything she's doing and all the stuff. And I'm like, when they told me about that, like, and they're like, you know, she was really nice. I'm like, I know this sounds really horrible, but to me that sounds really patronising. Like, that's exactly what I didn't want. Yeah. Like, who are you to be proud of me? I don't even know who you are. We don't get along. Yeah. Like. And
not only that, but don't be proud of me because I'm doing it with a baby. Like, I'm just doing it. Yeah. You know, and it's.
I mean, in hindsight, having now been years later, being diagnosed with ADD passive, I'm really proud of myself that I actually got things handed in and had a baby and had to do it that way. So,
but I think even without it, like, we've all got our journey, and there's challenges regardless of whether there's labels attached or children attached. Everyone's got challenges, and I think anybody who, I mean, I take my hat off to you for doing year 12 twice. Doing it once nearly broke me. Like, oh my God, my kids aren't doing year 11 and 12 because I still haven't managed to psychologically recover from my doing year 11 and 12. And like, there are other pathways into uni
definitely.
now. But I know, when we were going through school, and you are younger than me, but when we were going through school, that was the only pathway that we knew about, really.
There wasn't anything else. And having not done so well the first time, finding Canning College was a blessing. And Canning College was more like, it was a godsend, it really was, because it was more like uni than high school. You only had to be there if you had class. You didn't have to be there all the time. And it was,
you didn't have
there
to
wasn't
go and do
any of the
religious
little
education.
rat bags. There wasn't any of the little rat bags in the corner who are only there because their parents don't give them another option, and they didn't get an apprenticeship, and so they couldn't leave school, and all that sort of stuff. It was only people who wanted to be there, and it was like-minded people, and there were older people there that were so helpful. And like I said, that was the year I got pregnant, and everybody that I had met there were just amazing as well, and rallied around me and helped me out in any way that they could. And because back then you could actually get special circumstances when you were doing the exams. So because I was 6-7 months pregnant, and I went from, I wasn't as big back then, like I was quite small, and I got quite big by the time I was doing my exams. And so sitting on those high school chairs for 3 hours wasn't an option. And the way that my morning sickness worked, not eating for 3 hours wasn't an option. So I actually had permission to sit in a separate room with a supervisor, and I had like a nice sort of office chair type thing that was comfortable and ergonomically sound and all that kind of thing to protect my back and make me a little bit more comfortable. And I was allowed to leave the room 3 times for 5 minutes to have something to eat during the 3 hours,
or to wee or vomit,
or to go for a walk just to get up, get the blood circulating again. I was allowed to do that. The supervisor had to stand at the door and watch me, but I could only waddle a certain distance anyway.
5 minutes.
It did help. It was a godsend, and I don't know that you can actually get those sort of permissions these days. But
I don't know. I mean, gosh, you should be able to.
You would think, because I know that there's a high school, I've found out now, that is specifically for expectant mothers, or mothers with small babies, stuff like that. So they can go to school. Yeah,
so there's actually 2. There's one north and one south of the river, and the one that's south of the river, they have, and I think the north one does as well. So they've got things for expectant mothers, but also for after babies are born, to be able to support the women, or young women, girls, to be able to finish their year or their education to the level that they want to. So which is great. And so you finished your degree?
Yes, I did.
Now, did you finish your degree for you, or did you finish your degree just to say, suck that to the doctor?
So I did photocopy my diploma and mail it to her, maybe. Because that's just me, like, challenge accepted, haha. But I don't know, because it was what I had always wanted to do, and so I don't know if I finished because I was going to, or if it was, complete. I'm going to flip you off, I'll prove you wrong, or if it was because this is the best thing for my child. So and then I look back at it as well, and I don't even know if I would have continued. Like, if I had got into uni, would I have actually finished if I didn't have him? Was that my driving force? I'm not sure. And so did you, so you stayed living with mum and dad until I finished uni? That was mum's one rule after she found out. So and then my first posting was Esperance.
Oh.
So they were really upset that I was taking my baby away, but I'd always wanted to teach rural. I wanted to go country. My brother has always said that he's a snob. He's always said that I'm a country chick that was born in the city, and so that was just all I ever wanted to do was teach remote. But I couldn't go quite as remote because I had Bubs, and he was only 4 then, so he was starting kindy the day I started teaching.
Oh,
so it was I planned it well, apparently.
But my mind is just exploding with questions, because you've gone from being in, so not in the city, but in the suburbs here, with. You were at the time living with your mum, your dad, your grandmother.
My sister was still in the house.
Your sister was still at home as well. You'd got, were you still with baby's dad when you finished uni?
No, not by that stage.
So but you got his parents who had been really supportive with looking after Bub as well. You got friends who were supportive as well. So you left your entire support system to move how many hours away?
It's like 7.5 hours if you take the shortcuts.
Oh my God.
It's an hour and a half flight.
Oh, okay. That's not too
But
bad
I did have a cousin that lived down there as well, so I did have a little link to family, and they were great as well.
Yeah.
They had a boy that was only 6 months older than Ben, so it did, sort of work out helpful.
Yeah. So how did baby's dad go with you taking him away?
Yeah, it wasn't a good time.
Yeah, I imagine that must have been, I mean, that's difficult negotiating at the best of times.
Yeah.
And then I'm just trying to imagine the thought of, how did you get Bub to kindy?
So he was at the school I was teaching at.
Okay.
I enrolled him where I was teaching.
Yeah.
And
so
the
did
days he was
primary school teaching?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. I remember when I was like in high school and I wasn't good enough with them because I get the works as the year goes on.
And they're taller than you by the time they start year 7.
Half of them are taller than me before they even get into. And see, back then year 7 wasn't at high school yet. But I taught year 4 my first 2 years, and half of them were taller than me by the end of the year anyway. So the down there, see, back then when he started kindy, up here, kindy was still only half days.
Yeah.
But down there, because they had so many kids, and I cried the first day.
I bet.
Because there was kindy kids put on a bus, and it's just that's just how they are.
Yeah.
I'm from the city, so it was different for me. But, put on the bus from farms for their first day of kindy, and I was like, oh my gosh. Luckily, my mum was down when he started kindy, because I thought it was only half a day. I didn't even send lunch for the poor little boy. And so I had to ring my mum and get her to make, I had to get the poor office lady to ring my mum and say, can you make him a sandwich and bring it around, because, he stays here all day. So my mum's like, what, all day kindy? What is that?
That's a long day for a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And see, some of those kids would have, wouldn't even been 4 yet.
Yeah, far out.
But they had all day, and it was 3 days 1 week and 2 days the other week. So then I had to get family daycare for when my mum wasn't there. And he'd go to the family daycare. And luckily, it was just that year, because pre-primary was full days from day 1.
Yeah, and then he could come to you.
And then he was I'd just take him to and from school. Yeah. And I actually made some really good friends down there. There was one lady who she moved to the town halfway through my first year down there, and her second child was in class with my oldest. Yeah. And so they got along really well. And that little boy, he actually found it difficult to make friends. And my oldest was just so placid and so, welcoming and happy and all that sort of stuff, that he gravitated towards him completely. And so if we had staff meetings or anything like that, she would take my oldest for me and look after him, and I'd go pick him up after. Yeah. So, that sort of whole community feel, which for a lot of places up here, there are some, don't get me wrong, but you just don't really get that. But down there, everybody just looks after you, and it's beautiful. Yeah. So that did make it a lot easier.
How long was your mum with you down there?
Only a couple of weeks. But then if I was coming up, because we'd have to bring my oldest up to see his dad during school holidays, so his dad would have a week with him. So if he was having him if I was coming up straight away, then I'd come up, stay a couple of days, and then drive back down, and my mum would pick him up after the week and drive him down. And then if I wasn't coming straight up, we'd do it the opposite way. So she'd come down just before school finished and bring him back, and then I'd go up a few days into the holidays and bring him home when we come home. So,
because negotiating that at any age would be tricky, but trying to negotiate that when you're 20, 21,
it wasn't friendly.
No, must have been really difficult.
Yeah. We did a lot of horrible things to each other, but we grew up and we got over it.
I was going to say, do you think that was partly to do with your age as well? Or?
I think so, yeah. And just the whole, I think in some ways we were both just too competitive. I know that sounds really silly, but just that whole mentality of don't tell me what I can't do. Yeah. So I think that came into it a lot. And a lot of the things that I did, he thought was to get back at him, but it was just how I did things. And, and it took a long time for us to get to a place where we just needed to get over ours and focus on him. Yeah, so that's it. We did get there eventually, but it took a while.
Yeah, and you're not alone with that, and that's certainly not something that's related to age. Like I know a fair few people who really struggle, and really it comes down to not what's best for mum, not what's best for dad, but what's best for baby or child, and which is really easy for me to say when I'm still married to the father of my children.
But it does get, and the whole, one of my biggest things was the rules that were at Dad's house they're not my rules because we're different people.
Yeah.
And, you know, even if we were together, we'd still see things differently and we'd, you know, be different to us, like, even within the same household. By that stage, we would have found our way to, you know, combat that. But, okay, now you've got your house and I've got my house. And I was always from the beginning, very big on, okay, that's the rules at Dad's house. That's not the rules at my house.
Yeah.
It's different at my house, so you need to. And he took into that pretty quickly because I didn't allow it to be any other way.
Yeah. So when you moved down to Esperance, how old were you then?
20. I turned 22 like 3 months after I moved down.
So you're 22 moving out of home for the first time, and you moved out of home with a 4-year-old.
Was it 22? No, I must have been nearly 23. Yeah, because it's 4 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I must have been nearly 23.
So do you feel like you missed out on wild teenage years? Or
no, because I did them later on when I moved back and it was old enough, yeah. But no, I felt I lost a lot of friendships in that time, and it wasn't anyone's fault. No one was nasty or horrible or anything like that. It was just we were in different places.
Really different places.
I had a newborn that I had to be home with, and I had the same assignments that some people had to get in, but
when you're up changing nappies or feeding in the middle of the night, there's no time to be out clubbing and doing those kinds of things.
But I did manage to get that in once I'd because I got married before I moved to Esperance, and then that broke up before I came back. And so when I did come back, I had some friends who were really good, and we'd go out every Friday night, the weekends that my oldest was at his dad's. So I wouldn't go out if I had him, but I did go out if I didn't have him. And so I got to sort of play out a little bit of, I had been a bit of a rat bag all my life anyway, so you know, but I did get to have a little bit of that time. I don't believe in regret because every circumstance, every situation or experience that you have in your life creates the person you are. So if you have regret about anything, that devalues who you've become.
Yeah.
So I don't like to believe in regret. I did a lot way back when, but now I've got to a place where no, I don't believe in regret because that means that I don't love who I am. I don't value who I have become because of those experiences. But there are things that like, that might have been nice, but then you get the whole what if scenario, and that's a cancer. You can't. Yeah.
And it might have been nice, but actually what you had was something really special as well.
And one of my favourite songs is Dixie Chicks' Long Way Round. Story of my life, because I never do anything the easy way. And so that if I get into a place where I'm feeling a little bit down or feeling a little bit, I could have done that, I play that song and then I'm like, no, this is where I'm supposed to be. Yeah. So.
And you've mentioned that, you know, obviously friendships changed and things like that. Were you going to church a lot before you had baby? Because I'm wondering, how was it received at church?
Actually, a lot better than I thought it would. There was a couple of the old cronies who got put in their place very quickly. But most of the people, like my mum has a group of friends who they were all parents at church at the same time when we were little, and we call them cauldron now because they meet every second. Like every 2 weeks they would meet and have coffee and stuff, and we used to say that they'd sit and stir the pot and stuff. So they call it cauldron. And those ladies were amazing, and they were, you know, they are just the most powerful, beautiful, strong, spirited people that you could ever meet. And they were gorgeous about it. Like, understandably, you know, Mum had her, oh my gosh, and they were sort of all the shock to start off with, but never any judgment from them or anything like that. They were just great people. I know when I did, even after I had my oldest, I still used to go to Mass every Sunday with Mum, and once he started walking, which was pretty quickly, we would sit, you know, obviously raised Catholic backseat bogan, pick the lap, get in and pick the back row. So Mum always sat in that same back row. So we would sit on the edge next to the sliding doors. Yeah. And so that way during summer they'd be open and he could get out and he could run up and down the paving without disturbing anyone or anything like that. And then the choir would sit at the front of that line of pews, and he would run down that in the inside into the choir. And there was a gentleman in the choir who was the husband of one of the ladies that was my mum's friends, and he'd run down and he just had the best relationship with him. Oh. It was just beautiful, and he'd run down and he'd sort of giggle and then he'd run back. And there was one little old lady who didn't think that was appropriate and had mentioned a couple of times and sort of made me feel bad. And so I had said to Mum about not wanting to go because of the judgment and stuff, and she was a little bit miffed about that and didn't actually say anything to this little old duck, because she had grown up on the same street and she was a little old duck when my mum was a kid, and she knew what she was like. But she did happen to mention something to the priest, and the priest, the next sermon, was all about how there's a mass on Sunday morning at 7:30, and children don't generally come to that one. So if you don't like children, perhaps that's a good choice for you.
But also, is church not about acceptance and inclusion?
He was disturbing her. And the priest was like, well, you ain't disturbing anyone else.
Yeah.
I don't even care if he comes up onto the stage, up onto the altar and says mass with me. I don't have a problem. If we don't have kids in the church, we don't have a church in a few years.
Well, that's exactly right.
And so that made me feel a lot better as well.
Mm. And I think that this is how we get to show acceptance and inclusion, is by actually living acceptance and inclusion.
Yeah. And I've just, even with all the, being raised Catholic, all that sort of stuff, all I have in my head, and then, again, there's a lot of people who hate on it, is the only person who has the ability to judge me or has the right to judge me is my maker, and that ain't you. Mm. So I don't need your judgment. One of the things in the Bible was, let the children come. It was all about the children in the New Testament. So, and that was one of the things that the priest hounded about. Children are supposed to be here. That is the church.
Yeah.
And so just looking at things like that, and you can have your judgment, but then that's something that, Judgy McJudgertons don't get into heaven, darling.
My thing is, I've talked about this before on the podcast, but, I remember having a lady come up in the shopping centre. And so if my husband takes the kids to the shops, oh, my God, he's the best person ever, because if Dad's giving Mum a rest and he's taking the kid, aren't you amazing? I take my kids to the shops, and if they make the slightest bit of noise, then you get judgment for it. They're a bit older now, so I'm lucky that doesn't happen. But, so now if it's people making noise, it's normally me who's the one jumping in the puddles and things like that. But I remember saying to this lady, you know what? I don't need your judgment, because I'm doing a really, really good job of judging myself. And so if there's anything in this world that I'm good at, it's judging myself. So I promise you I'm doing a really good job of that. But thanks very much for thanks for your help. But actually, I reckon I've got this covered. And I just think there's too much judgment. And I think that as women and as mums, we need to be able to let go of that.
Yeah.
And judging ourselves, we need to stop judging ourselves as well.
One of the ones I also got was the fact that I'd had a cesarean, so I hadn't done it right.
Oh, yes.
Like, I had someone who, I didn't really know them, but they were like an acquaintance who was pregnant at the same time, basically. And I remember running into them at the shop. Oh, how was it? How was the birth? All this sort of stuff, which, as far as I'm concerned, it's not really a question you should ask anyway. But
I'm the total opposite. I will ask you every detail there is.
Which I get, and that's fine. But like, she
maybe
wasn't
not
really
in a shopping
a friend
centre
or anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, she was just someone that I happened to know through other people. And I remember, saying, oh no, I ended up having to have an emergency Caesar, like, nearly died or whatever. And she was just like, oh well, don't worry about it. Maybe next time you can do it right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I remember having somebody say to me, oh, so you didn't actually give birth then? Well, what did I do? And, I'll joke about it, and I say that I had my children surgically removed and, that kind of thing.
Well, see, that's why I always say I couldn't be pregnant again, because my body doesn't deal with parasites. Because I know that sounds judgmental and horrible, but if you think about it, the definition of a parasite, well, I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And then, so my other question was, you married, so after baby's dad, you married.
Yes.
And then you're now with another long-term partner. How was it dating with a small person, and particularly being a young person dating with a small person?
Yeah, it was interesting, because, when I moved back from Esperance, I did online dating, which was not hugely a big thing back then.
There was a lot of judgment about,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, a lot of people who met their partners on eHarmony or those kinds of things.
Yeah.
They don't tell anybody that.
No. And I'm like, you met, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, at least you went drunk and, got into, wrote his name, wrote your phone number on his, leg, or got him to write his phone number on your boob, or, something like that, because that's the only skin that would be showing. But, I found it interesting, because there was a lot of people on the dating sites who would, things like single mothers need not apply.
No problem. Thanks very much for the heads up.
And because I didn't lead with that fact, or it wasn't that I kept it from them. Like, it was in my profile, but it was just also like I would get to know them first because I did feel that I had a certain job to protect my oldest. Like I'm not just going to have, a revolving door. God, not that I was like that way inclined, but I wasn't going to have a whole heap of random guys that are just in and out of his life. I didn't want that for him. So unless it did get serious, I wouldn't introduce him to
But you
them.
did have it on your profile, so you didn't have to go there, well, how long do I need to know them before I trust them enough to tell them that I've got a baby?
And so then you also got to have, of course, because I've done teaching, so I've done mandatory reporting and all that sort of stuff. So then you've got in your head, well, are they only like looking to me because I've got a child?
Thought about that.
And so, and I know that sounds like a really pessimistic, negative view, but that's in the back of your mind.
You have to look after your baby.
And so, I mean, there was one that was just a little bit too interested in the fact that I had a kid, and so I was like, I don't think this is going to work. But most the guys that I ended up dating, they were pretty good. And I mean, there was a couple of real losers, but they were a loser in the fact that we didn't mesh well, but they were probably a brilliant person for someone else, just not me. So I don't mean that as a loser in being judgmental of them, if you will, just in that it was a loss that there was nothing, it wasn't going to work for us.
So how old was your eldest when you started dating?
He must have been about 6. Year 1, because that's when I came back from. We were only in Espers for the 2 years.
Wow. Oh, all of those things to think about. And so if you met I guess if you could talk to 18-year-old Cinta, and what advice would you give yourself if you were going through it again?
Probably the same as Helen Mirren likes to say: tell more people to F off.
And you don't even have to say it. Sometimes you can just look at them.
Oh no, I've got the eyes for it. I don't need to say. Like I talk way too much, but I really don't have to because my face is just one of those faces.
But I think that's it's really good advice because other people's opinions are just that. And you don't have to take that on board.
Well, other people's opinions are really none of my business.
Yeah, that's right. It's hard to remember that at times.
Oh,
I know it in theory, but just in practice, I'm not very good at that.
It's a lot easier now than it was back then, because back then it cut like a knife a lot of the time. But I've gotten to become more like those women that I was raised with, thank God. So it's
nice,
different now.
And if you're, if one of your children came home and told you that they were going to be a parent at 17, 18, if one of your friends' children came and told them, how would you encourage them to react and respond?
I've actually been through this. And the biggest thing is just you can't ever have in your mind that it's a mistake. And I remember talking to this mate of mine, and he was just, but I'd never say it to them. And I'm like, but it's in your head, so they're going to feel it. It doesn't matter that you wouldn't say it to them. It's in your head. It's got to get out. Because whatever you think, even if you don't say it to them, they're still going to feel it. So you just have to remove that completely because it's not a mistake. It's their journey.
And could you imagine now, this doctor who you went to, now your baby is about to turn 21. So it's more than 21 years ago that you went to that doctor and the doctor sat you down and said, your only option is to terminate this pregnancy, otherwise your life is over. That's effectively what she said. And so she obviously thought that your now 21-year-old, almost 21-year-old, was a mistake.
Yes.
How can you, I can't sort of get my head around how other people can think that this beautiful baby that's now grown into a man is a mistake.
So I guess it just depends on your upbringing, your the way you look at things. I mean, she had never had children, so that comes into that's a factor. And just I don't judge anyone who's had an abortion. It's just something that I physically was not able to bring myself to do.
Sorry, I definitely wasn't passing judgment on people who have had terminations. What I was saying is that it wasn't her right or place to be making that judgment.
And that's where I'm at. So on the same angle, no one has the right to say you shouldn't have had that. And that's my biggest thing is it's just such a big area that there's no right answer. There's only the answer that the person in the situation can live with. and that's it.
And you had options. You could have chosen to terminate. You could have chosen to put your baby up for adoption. You could have chosen to have the baby and raise your child.
Yeah.
You had those. There are 3 options, and she told you that you only had one.
That was the only one. And like it was almost like a scare tactic.
Yeah.
And for me personally, it wasn't something I could live with.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wouldn't be the person. I don't think I would be here. I don't think I could have had more kids if I had have gone through the termination. The whole idea of I overthink too much everything. The whole idea of having a part of me out in the world somewhere that I don't know, that I can't protect or look after, as much as they could have had the most beautiful adoptive parents, I wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
And I couldn't live with that either.
Mm.
So keeping the baby really was the only option for me. But that's my personal choice. And I don't begrudge anyone else who's done any of the other, because it's a beautiful gift to give someone, and I understand that. It's just not a gift I was willing to make, or that I could reconcile myself to do.
Yeah.
So they were just things I couldn't do. But I would be happily go and hold a friend's hand when they if that's what they needed me to do, if that's what they needed me to be there, when they gave their child up for adoption, or if they needed to have an abortion, that's their decision, and it's not for me to pass judgment on that. Yeah. I couldn't do it, but that doesn't mean that they should.
It's not right for somebody else. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And just going back to that doctor, she told you that you would never have an education, you'd never have a career, and you'd never find another man who would love you because you had somebody else's child. And all 3 of those things. Yeah, nice. And so before we finish up today, are there any other thoughts that you would like to share around this?
Just the biggest thing with anyone, a young person in position or anything like that, or any absolute star who's having a child, just remember that when someone gives you, the best advice I ever got was, when someone gives you advice, smile and nod. If you want to try it, try it. If it doesn't work, push it away. Yeah. Say that you thank them for their advice, but as long as you and your child are happy and healthy, that's all that matters. So don't allow people in your space that are going to try and push things on you because you're not doing it the way they did it. Because the way they did it might not work for you and your child. So please just... Or
especially if they raised a baby 30 or 40 years ago.
That you're still raising now. Like, let's be honest. Come on.
This is right.
So, just the best advice is smile and nod and just do what works best for you. As long as you and your baby are safe, happy and healthy, that's what you need to worry about. Yeah. Not keeping other generations, friends, family, extended family happy that you're doing how they did it or what they want, because they need some sort of recognition that what they did was right, because it was right for them. Yeah. But that doesn't make it right for you.
And I know that I'm supposed to be wrapping up, but I guess I'm just putting myself in your parents' situation or position for a minute, because my kids are, my eldest is getting close to the age that you were when you had to tell your parents. Did you feel that they were able, and I'm kind of going through in my head, for parents whose children may be going to tell them that they're going to have a baby at a young age, how do you let go of that kind of thoughts that this is a mistake or, oh my God, what's going to happen to them? And I'm kind of thinking, well, do your own work first, and then when you've done your work, you're able to then sit in that space nicely with them. But how do you tell people without that fear or, that fear of judgment? How do you tell people in a way that becomes...
I think these days even when I did it was a lot different to the poor women who had to do it in the 60s and that sort of stuff, because, they got sent away and the babies were taken from them, right? Let's be honest. And there were amazing people who didn't do that and, grandparents who kept their children. But then there's also the thing where I know back when my grandma was younger, there were situations where people were, a young girl would have a baby and then it would be raised as their sibling, sister, that sort of thing. So back to when I told my parents was a lot different to telling parents now, I believe, because I think like our generation, being the parents who are going to be told, we're a lot more open-minded about it. We've had more of an opportunity to meet someone who has been through that situation and come out the other side. Yeah,
and fine. It's not as hushed up.
So, it's not as hidden and swept under the carpet. It's just something that happens, and it's a normal thing these days. A lot more normal than it was 21 years ago, a lot more normal than it was, 21 years before that. So, and I mean, you've seen me through the whole time with my oldest. So I think you are in a position where even if you did have that slight worry about it, I know I'd be getting messages and we'd be chatting. We'd have gone for coffee or vodka, whichever, we need.
Probably that one.
But everybody, just find someone that you can chat to that is going to help you through that. But never, never, never allow any of your, and it's not necessarily a negative thought or a judgment on the parent's behalf. It's the worry of, oh my God, what if this does end it? It doesn't end it. It's just another step in the long way round. Long way round is fine because, they do more steps and get up to 10,000 a day. It's all good. Long way round is fine and slower is fine, The tortoise ended up beating the hare. Yeah. It's just a different way. Yeah. It's not a wrong way.
Oh, that's beautiful. And that seems like an absolutely perfect place to end. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I think that we've definitely taken the long way around in this conversation. But I really appreciate all of the different thoughts and you sharing so openly with us today.
No worries.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you for joining me for today's episode of A Hidden World of Women, a podcast brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. For more information on the services we offer, head to whws.org.au or Women's Health and Wellbeing Services on YouTube and social media. Looking forward to the next episode where we uncover the hidden world of women.